Hello, BookTube. Well, it's Monday. I hope everybody had a good weekend. I just yesterday saw a video from Brock over at the Active Mind called My Five Ambitious Literary Goals, in which he goes over his goals for this year. He says in that video that he was inspired by Maria over at the channel Strange Lucidity, which is a channel that I also watch. So it's part of what's cool about BookTube is that everybody kind of makes videos inspired by what everyone else is making. So it got me thinking about my own literary goals. Now, as Brock says in the title of that video, his are ambitious, and so are Maria's. One of hers is to learn six languages fluently, which I can't imagine doing. So my five goals are not nearly as ambitious as either of theirs, but I still have many goals for this year, and I wanted to put them into a list. And like Brock said in his video, it helps him get to know everybody, or everybody to get to know him. So I thought that my goals would similarly help you get to know me and what I want to do with my BookTube channel and my year in reading. So the first and most obvious is that I want to upload videos consistently. I have already learned to really enjoy it. BookTube is something that I want to do for fun. Obviously, it's not something that, at least right now, is going to matriculate into any sort of professional thing, and that is totally fine. I just want to be able to enjoy making videos. And last week, I put out a video every day, Monday through Friday, and already my videos have been getting positive feedback, which I really appreciate. I've been able to connect with some people over email, which I also really appreciate. I put my email in the description of every one of my videos. I encourage you to reach out for whatever reason. So I have already had a lot of fun with making YouTube videos, and I want to keep making videos on my BookTube channel Monday through Friday at the very least. And so that's a big goal for this year, is to connect with the BookTube community and make videos consistently. Number two is read Will Durant's Story of Civilization series from start to finish. I, last month in February, read what is the sixth volume in the series, the volume on the Reformation. And I started with that because I know a fair bit about the Reformation. I've read a fair bit about the Reformation, and I wasn't really sure whether or not this large 11-volume series was for me, whether or not I wanted to dedicate the time to read it. I mentioned in one of my videos that the Story of Civilization series is intimidating, not just because there are 11 volumes, but each individual volume is, in many cases, very large. One of those being the Reformation volume itself, which was like over 1,000 pages. So it took me a while to read. And, the question was, whether or not I wanted to do that, whether or not I wanted to commit the time to read it. But I had so much fun reading it that immediately I knew that I wanted to continue the series. And there were 11 volumes. I had read one in February, so I thought one a month for the rest of the year would be fun. And so for this month, I have the next volume in the series on my stack, The Coming of the Age of Reason, or The Age of Reason Begins, I think. And I'm planning on moving chronologically from the sixth volume all the way to the 11th, and then to start back at the first volume and then move to the fourth, or the fifth. And I think that's how I'll start, kind of like a Star Wars. Start with the middle and move to the end, and then start at the beginning and move toward the middle. So I think that's how I'm going to do it. And that would be a great accomplishment for me, is if I had this whole series read by the end of the year. I think that would be a lot of fun. I think that would be extremely cool to see this series unfold in its totality in the space of a year. And I'm really looking forward to being able to have that series read. And as many of you know, if you've watched this channel before, I'm really into history, and it will be history as I've never read it before. Usually I read history as, the reflections of specialized interests, so very specific historical moments, as opposed to this very large, sweeping survey of the entire, well, human experience, I guess, in 11 volumes. It's very interesting, and I would like to see how one authorial voice handles that. So I'm looking. Oh, sorry, poked the microphone. But I'm looking forward to that, and I will be doing that this year, hopefully. My third goal is to dip my toe into book reviewing. I'm not saying that I want to get published or that I want to do anything substantial, but kind of working with this BookTube channel and doing more with book reviewing. I think something related to book reviewing, I think, would be really cool. That's something that Brock mentions in his video. And, I've been a watcher and enjoyer of Steve Donahue for a long time, and he talks about he's very open with book reviewing. And it would be fascinating for me to try my hand in it, not only because I enjoy a really good book review from Steve Donahue or anyone else, but also because there have been books that I've read recently that I thought, man, I would have loved to be able to say something about this before it came out, or as it was coming out, just because I'm not the most educated on it, but I definitely have something to say. I'm familiar with who this is as an author. I'm familiar with this body of work, at least a little bit, and I'd like to be able to throw my hat in the ring in terms of saying something about this book in a critical capacity. So getting into that, either using my BookTube channel to facilitate that, or to just do it completely for my own private enjoyment, I think is something that I really want to do, especially because reading and writing are things that go hand in hand, and I do a lot more reading than I do writing. So, and they help each other. Your reading obviously helps your writing, but your writing can help your reading too, because you can use the fact that you're going to be writing about something as an incentive to pay attention to what you're reading to, to read it with a pencil in hand and to really focus on it, and to be a critical reader and dive into what you're reading with the attention that it's due, considering the fact that you're going to be talking about it in some critical capacity at some point. So for me, book reviewing is on my list of goals for this year in some capacity. Number 4 is get into poetry. I was communicating with somebody through email about this. I am not a poetry person. I don't read poetry. And that's a shame. And I know it's a shame. And I need to get into it. Steve Donahue is, I keep bringing him up, but he also has a lot of opinions about poetry. And in his mind, poetry died. Poetry is dead. And I can totally understand where he's coming from and why he would say that. And I remember when I was a kid, my favorite poem was The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe, and I actually had it memorized, and I thought I was a really cool kid because I had the Raven by Edgar Allan Poe memorized. That was the last poem that I ever remember really liking, and I think I liked it for the reasons that Steve Donahue says that poetry ended up dying, in the sense that it was something that I, as a middle schooler, could understand, and it had a narrative, and it was telling a story, and I liked that. It was telling a story, but it was a poem, so you could hold it in your hand by memorizing it, and I thought that was great, and I still think that's great. So when I get into poetry, or when I try to get into poetry, I think I'm going to focus on poetry like that, not necessarily, only exclusively by Edgar Allan Poe, but I mean poems that have a narrative, poems that are not imagist, not none of the imagist poems of like Ezra Pound or something like that. I mean poems with a narrative, poems that say something that I can actually understand just as kind of a poetry newbie, and then we'll go from there. We'll see what happens. But I'm not swinging for the fences. I'm not buying Ezra Pound's cantos, or I'm not buying, I'm not going to start with the Wasteland or something like that. I'm going to start somewhere much more approachable, much more agreeable. Maybe I'll start with the Romantics. I don't know. But I would like to be able to get into poetry more than I am. And if I can do that by the end of the year, if I can get into poetry and have some volumes of poetry read, that would make me very happy. So I don't have any poetry on this month's TBR. We'll see if I can fit one in. But next month, I'm going to put that on the TBR, at least one volume of poetry, whatever comes my way in the following month, because that seems like something that would make me very happy, is if I was able to have more pleasurable experiences with poetry as something that I've never really had a lot of interaction with, especially recently. So poetry, getting into poetry is number 4. And then number 5 is one that I'm sure other people can relate to. I want to read through my collection. I have a lot of books here. In fact, I'm giving away my books. And but nevertheless, there are a lot of books in my collection that I have not read yet, and that's bothering me. There are always books that I don't have that I want, but then I check myself against the fact that I have books here that I know are great, but I have not read them for one reason or another. And that is bothering me. So I need to get on that. And so there are many books here that I want to read, and I think, putting some of those books on my TBR, putting them on the stack for every month is going to be necessary. I don't buy books that I'm not interested in reading. That's just not something that I do. So all I know for a fact, there are some books that I will come across in a used bookstore and say, I want to get that because I want to have it, but I'm not going to read it for a little while, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. But there are some books that I have that I want to read actively, but I haven't for one reason or another, and I just need to tackle that. One of those, just to name an example, would be Thomas Pynchon's Mason and Dixon, which I was having a lot of fun reading at a certain point, and then for one reason or another, I abandoned it. Not because I didn't like it, but because things just got shifted around. I think I was in the process of moving. It was kind of crazy, but I didn't pick it back up again. And so now this book is sitting on my bookshelf, and every time I look at it, I think, gosh, I want to keep reading that. So I'm going to do that. Hopefully by the end of the year, I will have moved through a lot of those volumes that I have on my bookshelf that are really interesting to me, that I've been meaning to read for a long time, but haven't gotten around to finishing or reading for one reason or another. So another one of those is... Speaking of the Will Durant, I have 2 volumes that I was able to find, which was great, of H.G. Wells' The Outline of History, which I don't know if you know anything about. They're really interesting. These 2 volumes that H.G. Wells wrote, just kind of a grand survey of history, and they sound like they were a lot of fun to read. And so those have been sitting on my shelf for a while. There's just a bunch of books like that I bought with excitement to read, and then threw them on the bookshelf, and then they're just still sitting there, and it's like that's a problem. I got to solve that. So there you go. Those are my 5 literary goals. Thank you to Maria and Brock for the great idea, and I will continue to upload videos. So hopefully. Hopefully the quality will continue to improve, and I will keep making enjoyable videos for people to watch. So that's it for today. Thank you, BookTube.